Welcome back. In order for us to manipulate the this keyword, there are three really important methods that you see a lot, especially for senior JavaScript developer interviews. That is call, apply, and bind. And we saw bind in the previous video. So let's talk about them and see how they can be used. The first thing we're going to talk about is actually call and apply. And they look a lot more intimidating than they actually are. Because underneath the hood, all functions use call when invoking a function. Let me show you what I mean. If I do function A here, and inside of here I console.log, hi. If I do a.call, and I run this, I get hi. Underneath the hood in JavaScript, when I do a bracket to invoke the function, all functions, when created, have this property called call that allows us to call the function. So this is just a shorthand that we can use. How cool is that? What if we do apply here? If I run this, same thing. Call and apply do the same thing, for now at least. But let's see how call and apply can be useful besides just calling functions. Let's say that we're creating a game, and this game has a wizard, obviously. All games do. And this wizard has a name of Merlin, obviously. And Merlin has a health of 100. Good for Merlin. He's nice and healthy. And obviously, because Merlin is a wizard, he has a heal function. And this heal function can make this dot health, again, we're referring to a property of an object, to equal 100. That's an awesome power. So that anytime I do wizard dot heal, well, let's return something here so we can actually see what's happening. I get 100. That's fantastic. If his health goes to 50, well, as long as we run heal, we're all good. It's still going to be 100. Okay, but in the game, we need more than just one character, right? Let's add another character. And this time around, I'm going to add an archer. And this archer name will be, well, Robin Hood, obviously. And health for Robin Hood is only 30. I know, he's not doing too well. He needs some healing power. We just created this piece of code. And Robin Hood doesn't really do much. Has a name and health. But would it be nice if we're able to borrow a function from the wizard and heal archer? And I know I'm using a silly example here, especially for an advanced course, but I hope you can see the power of being able to borrow methods of other objects so that we keep our code dry, right? We don't repeat ourselves. We don't add to memory. We have one place where the method is and one place where we can change it. This is going to create a lot less bugs in our code. So how can we borrow the heal method for the archer? It's not part of the same object, so we can't just use this dot heal, right? We can't really just do this dot heal because, well, this object doesn't have it. And we don't want to copy and paste the code. Instead, we can borrow it. And we can use call and apply to borrow methods. So let's see how we can do that. I can simply say wizard.heal. So that is the method I want to use. And instead of calling it like we have before, I use .call, which if I run this, I'll just get wizard's health. But in here, I'm going to use call, and then the first parameter of call will be what this should be bound to. And if I scroll over here, you can see that call calls a method of an object substituting another object from the current object. very, very confusing. But essentially it's saying, hey, call heal. Instead of using wizard to call heal, use archer to call heal. And we're just going to borrow this heal from the wizard. So that if I run this, well, we don't know what happens yet. But let's just console.log archer and console.log archer again. So this is 1 and this is 2. If I run this, did you see that? At the beginning, my archer only had health of 30. But after we used Merlin's heal power and used it on archer, our health went back up to 100. How cool is that? And call actually has other parameters that it can receive. It can receive arguments. So that we can give archer or the heal method parameters. So for example, let's say the heal method took number 1 and number 2. And what this does is, well, we add number 1 plus number 2. So whatever two numbers we give, it adds to our current health. Let's make this a little bit bigger. There you go. That's a lot cleaner. I can now call archer with the parameters. So what are the parameters going to be? I'm going to give archer 50 health plus, let's do 30 health. So that if I run this, I have 110 now. Because to my current 30 health, I've added 50, which is 80, and then 30, which is 110. Look at that, 110 health. That's pretty good. That's all call is really useful for. I mean, it is quite useful, isn't it? And when it comes to apply, like I said, it does the same thing. The only difference between call and apply is that instead of call that just takes parameters, with apply, it takes an array of parameters. So that if I do this, it's still going to work. If I change this to, let's say 100, look at that, 160 health. That's pretty cool. So choosing which one to use, call or apply, just depends on which one is easier to pass the arguments in. Just decide whether it's easier to pass array of parameters or comma separated list of arguments. So next time you're thinking, I'm really jealous of that object, that method that object has. Wouldn't it be nice if I can just copy it? Well, does that function include the this keyword so that it can be dynamic? Cool. Then you can use call or apply on it. That's your test. All right, that's enough for call and apply, but what about the other one that I was talking about, bind? What happens if I use bind? Well, similar to call and apply, bind allows us to use what we have here. You see, bind, unlike call and apply that immediately runs a function, bind returns a new function with a certain context and parameters. And it's usually used when we want a function to be called later on with a certain type of context or a certain type of this keyword. Let's see how that would work. In order to use bind, we would do bind. And bind accepts, just like call, parameters. But if I run this now, it doesn't work. My archer, Robin Hood, didn't get healed. And that's because, unlike call and apply, it doesn't run the function. It returns a function. So that if I add it to a variable, let's say heal archer, so that we can use this function later on, we can now run heal archer. And if we click run, look at that. Our archer is healed. So bind allows us to store this keyword or this function borrowing for later use. And you might have noticed something here. Bind is like a band-aid to fix this idea of a dynamically scoped this keyword that ruins our entire lexical scoping discussion that we've had. Remember in the previous video how we talked about this solution? When we didn't have the arrow function, we can use bind. I hope that makes sense now. We were able to store the value of this, which was object, so that we can use it later. So that another function, instead of giving us this weird dynamically scoped this keyword, we're able to bind another function to use the this keyword, that is the object. So to review, call and apply, when are they useful? Well, call and apply are useful for borrowing methods from an object, while bind is useful for us to call functions later on with a certain context or certain this keyword. And by the way, there's one more interesting use of bind. Let's explore that in the next video.